Okay, take number 5. All right, Raiders, Nate. Yeah. All right, this. I should learn Japanese. I'm not very good at my job. Bye-bye. All right, take number 5. Exactly 12 months ago, the Las Vegas Raiders were almost in the exact same situation they are now, which is a losing season with a head coach that has clearly lost the locker room and appears to not know what he's doing. In that situation, Josh McDaniels held an open floor meeting between him and his players, and boy, did they rip into him. It was not pretty. It was not pretty. It was not pretty. It was ugly. It was ugly, and it was ugly. And so he had to step down and hand it off to Antonio Pierce, who then later became the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. Because of that meeting, Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler and the offensive coordinator all got fired just a couple of days later on Halloween night. Then Antonio Pierce takes over the team. He goes 5-4, and everything is looking really good. He even beats the Chiefs on Christmas Day, and the entire Raider Nation was ecstatic. But at the end of the season, there were some really high-quality coaches. I don't know, Jim Harbaugh, who was available. Also, others like Dan Quinn, who were available. And the Raiders passed on all of them, doing the bare minimum of interviewing other coaches, and just gave the job to Antonio Pierce, as per the request of Max Crosby, Devontae Adams, and others. And even podcasters like myself who believed in Antonio Pierce that he was going to bring back the Raider way. But all is not good. The ship is sinking, and Antonio Pierce is having major issues. We're going to get into an article by CBS, as well as some insider reports that I have obtained that you are going to want to stick around for. So let's just jump right into this report by CBS on how this meeting went 2.0 with Antonio Pierce and his players. Max Crosby and other players expressed concerns with staff in open floor meeting after firing's latest loss. The Raiders fired 3 offensive coordinators Sunday amid a 5-game skid. The 2-7 Las Vegas Raiders are enjoying a much-needed bye week after 5 straight losses, but the team didn't go quietly in its time off. Sources tell CBS Sports that several Raiders players, including team captain Max Crosby, spoke openly in the players and staff meeting on Monday, addressing what they viewed as inefficiencies and deficiencies within the organization on a week-to-week basis. The hope for everyone involved is that the talks result in some positive change for the Raiders in the second half of the season, much like what happened last season. Raiders head coach Antonio Pierce fired 3 offensive coaches Sunday night after the Raiders' 41-24 embarrassing loss to the Cincinnati Bengals. Offensive coordinator Luke Getsy, offensive line coach James Craig, and quarterbacks coach Rich Scangarello were all relieved of their duties after Sunday's game. By Monday morning, Pierce was reworking his offensive staff. Now, Scott Turner, who previously was an offensive coordinator for the Washington Redskins then and Carolina Panthers, eventually being named interim offensive coordinator. The Raiders never hired an assistant offensive line coach, which is somewhat unusual, but made senior offensive assistant coach Joe Philbin the new offensive line coach. Philbin had been working regularly with that group throughout the season, which led to their not needing an assistant. Assistant quarterbacks coach Fred Walker did not get the elevation despite Scangarello's firing, but the team did add Scott's dad, Norv Turner, to the team in an advisory role. The 72-year-old is a 3-time head coach and longtime NFL coordinator. Turner, Philbin, Marvin Lewis are all former head coaches who are on Pierce's staff. After Monday's coaches meeting, the team met with staff and the floor was open for anyone to speak their mind. According to sources, a few themes emerged. Players had issues with the schedule not being efficient. There was a lack of organization, wasting of time, and there was a lack of discipline and accountability. And I've said that here on this podcast before. I've been to the practices, and let me tell you, it seems like more of going to a party than going to a practice. There's a lot of music, a lot of dancing, and a lot of lackadaisical practice going on. It doesn't seem organized, it doesn't seem disciplined, and it definitely doesn't seem like we are building a hard-nosed, physically violent football team. It seems more like we're building a cheerleader team, and that's just my perspective of what I have seen but also many other have said the same thing on social media, as well as reporters, sports reporters, beats reporters, etc. have all said the same thing, that the practices do not seem like other professional practices. One source described the meeting as ending uncomfortable for all parties. But to be sure, this meeting was nothing like the one between the players and head coach for almost exactly a year ago, just days before Mark Davis fired Josh McDaniels as head coach. McDaniels opened the floor to players. They ripped into McDaniels for how he behaved and ran the team. Word got back to the owner, and McDaniels was fired a few days later on Halloween. Players rallied around Pierce to get the permanent job last year as the team went 5-4 with him and had high expectations. The Raiders did the bare minimum to comply with league rules in their search for installing Pierce as a permanent head coach, which has been the expectation around the league since Christmas Day victory over the Chiefs. Pierce and his reworked coaching staff are hoping for another strong second half to a season, and it starts when players report back from the bye week on Monday to prepare for the Miami Dolphins. But wait, there is more. This isn't the only thing that we're here to report on. The fact is that it does appear that Antonio Pierce has lost that locker room. In fact, he has also lost the respect of some of his assistant coaches, who are very frustrated with this situation because their livelihoods also depend on Antonio Pierce and the Raiders winning games. Because if they lose games, Antonio Pierce gets fired, it's usually the entire staff that goes with the head coach, as a new head coach will bring in new staff almost 95% of the time. And so they're frustrated with this whole situation with Antonio Pierce not being able to rectify and right the ship as they should be. Also, more news coming to us here at the Raider D podcast from sources within the Raiders organization, and that is that not only is Mark Davis very upset with how everything has gone with Antonio Pierce, but he's also already looking for Antonio Pierce's replacement. And if that is true, then also this other information that we have received may also be true, and that is that he is looking at Deion Sanders to come in and draft his son Shedeur Sanders. But that's not new, because I reported on that 2 weeks ago. What is new, and what I just learned yesterday, is the fact that that Mark Davis is actually considering offering the head coaching job to none other than Kliff Kingsbury. That's right, the very same offensive coordinator that the Raiders ran off last year when Mark Davis refused to give him a 4-year deal, something that was required of him to sign on the dotted line. Since he wouldn't get any type of a guarantee from Mark Davis, he walked over to the Washington Redskins. And look what they are doing over there in Washington. That air raid offense, which would have been perfect for the Raiders, is now doing wonders for the Washington Redskins, who are currently leading in their division when they were one of the worst teams in the NFL just last year. So now Mark Davis wants to go and offer Kliff Kingsbury the job at the end of the season. The question is, do you really think that Kliff Kingsbury would want to come and work for Mark Davis when he shat all over him and wouldn't give him the deal that he wanted last year? I don't think so. If Kliff Kingsbury would have been the offensive coordinator for the Raiders this year, we would have been in an entirely different situation. And now Mark Davis and the Davis family, who are known for running off talent, seeing them succeed somewhere else and then trying to bring them back and replicate it back with the Raiders, is once again doing the same thing. They ran off Kliff Kingsbury, and now they want to bring him back as head coach. For me personally, I think if I'm Kliff Kingsbury, I go somewhere else, or I stick with Washington. I don't come to the Raiders. However, maybe Tom Brady can be the saving grace, because he is a superstar and he attracts people. So if we're going to go after Kliff Kingsbury, if you're Mark Davis and you're listening to this, please send Tom Brady to do the negotiations and not you, because all you do is run people away from this very historic organization. Let Tom be the face of the ownership from here on. And guys, drop your comments down below. Would you like to see Kliff Kingsbury be the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders next year,